Will the price of XRP go up at the same time that Bitcoin prices drop? Someone wrote an interesting post earlier today about a possible situation in which XRP goes through the roof and Bitcoin crashes as a result. In this video, I'm going to break down that idea. Before I talk about whether or not I agree with this idea, I'd like to talk about why it's being put forward. A lot of people in the XRP are very focused on how useful cryptocurrencies can be, just like I am. Some people who believe that these networks could be used for real-world business activities are left wondering what Bitcoin is even good for. This video is going to break that down, so make sure you watch it all the way through. As always, you're a huge help to this service. Thank you to everyone who liked the movies and signed up for the channel. These two easy things help me a lot. Also, my best exchange is listed in the video's description if you ever need to buy XRP. But that's how I got into it. I hope you guys enjoy it. So the idea of whether Bitcoin will still be around in the future is something I find very interesting. When people look at Bitcoin, they often think this network isn't as useful as some of these newer cryptocurrencies. And I agree that the Bitcoin network itself probably won't be very useful in the future. But I do have a question about something when people make these big claims. That's the network effect of Bitcoin right now. When it comes to the network effect of cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin is currently the leader. Also, network impacts are really important. It's basically about how many people there are and how busy the network is. There's no doubt that Bitcoin has the most mind share and volume, even though its network isn't really designed for a lot of action or a lot of user. When it comes to usefulness, these are two very important measures. The Bitcoin network is being used for these things, even if they aren't good for it. When it comes to the network impact, there's no doubt in my mind right now that Bitcoin is winner. Now, I do believe that the XRP record is doing something that will help it win the network effect in the end. We'll talk about that after the movie. But first, I'd like to show you some interesting posts I just read that made me think about what might be one of the biggest risks of Bitcoin. Now, Michael Saylor wrote a post earlier today in which he said that Bitcoin has no counterparty risk. I agree with this in general, but he goes on to say that Bitcoin has no company, country, creditor, currency, rival, culture, or even chaos. I don't understand the post very well, but I get what he's trying to say, and I think it's mostly right. In fact, this is true for most coins. Someone posted something very interesting. Paul walked in and said, but Bitcoin does have a network effect risk. If an altcoin gets to 8 billion daily users first, it could wipe out Bitcoin. I find this very interesting because it makes me think of one of Bitcoin's biggest problems. One person who brought this up was Jack Dorsey, who I truly believe created Bitcoin. That's something for a different show. A few days ago, Jack Dorsey wrote a post in which he talked about what he sees as Bitcoin's biggest threat. He also says that Bitcoin is most at risk if people keep seeing it as a way to save money. He thinks that's a big problem for Bitcoin because it limits how much the network effect could grow. Look at something that looks like gold. Most people don't have much gold, but it is seen as a good way to save money right now. Of course, gold isn't really useful, right? Some people may keep a small amount of it in their bank accounts or something. Not only is it used to make jewelry and other things, but it's also a good way to save money. Its market value is $10 trillion, 0 cents, which is a lot of money. On the other hand, when you think about what cryptocurrency could do for the economy, a store of value doesn't really seem like the most important thing they will become. It's important to remember that these were made to be new pipes for the banking system. Well, that's not great for making a network effect if these are just things you're going to hold on to, put away, and never touch again. Because some people might hold on to that thing as a source of value and others won't, but it's not really a part of the economy. It's just something you put away, forget about, and never touch again. In this case, Paul is making the same point. This is basically him saying that it's a big problem for the network effect of a cryptocurrency if Bitcoin only ever turns into a store value and only a small group of people hold it to protect their own value because that's how they want to store their value. And it just shows the problem with how Bitcoin was made. Bitcoin was formed by a movement from the bottom up. A lot of people were drawn to Bitcoin's ideals because they thought it would be better than the way things are now. Since this is the case, the Bitcoin network was found very early on, and most Bitcoins were given to the first people who learned about it. They now have all the value in this store of value network, though, and no one else can really get in. They see it as a source of value, but new people who come in won't necessarily see it that way because they don't have the same economic advantage as the early people. Also, most of the Bitcoins have already been given out. Everyone knows that most of these people will never give up their Bitcoin. For those people, Bitcoin will still be a good way to save money. But there's not much reason for other people to join the network and use it. It's just that the network can't handle actions for anything else. Additionally, I believe that these coin networks will play a huge role in the world we're creating. Large financial institutions like JP Morgan and Citibank are telling us that public blockchains are real innovations that will change the way the financial system works. Bitcoin is not able to do that. It also has to do with Ripple's plan from the start. The idea that everyone will use these networks on their own is not going to spread from the ground up. That's not how the web works. We don't all deal with the internet protocols and the network protocols that run underneath them on our own. We have a bunch of high-tech apps that make everything work. Is it possible for me to use the internet by myself and talk to the protocols directly? Yes, most likely. Would I like to? Without a doubt not. It will be the same for these coin networks as well. David Schwartz said something very interesting in an interview not long ago. He said he was more sure than ever that moving from the top down to get people to use cryptocurrencies was the right way to do it. And, to be honest, I did question this at first. I always thought, I wonder if he's still sure about this or if that was just something he thought in the beginning. In a recent interview, he said this was true, which makes me think of two things. One, David Schwartz is saying that the wide use of cryptocurrencies is still a long way off if it hasn't already begun. He still believes that the biggest uptake will come from people who use the networks underneath without even realizing it. This is how XRP can reach 8 billion people. What was said in the last post might be the worst thing that could happen to Bitcoin. People from 8 billion different countries will never download wallets, keep Bitcoin as a store of value, hide it, or do anything else with Bitcoin ever again. Is it possible that a lot of people will do this? Of course. There are already a lot of people who have decided to go this route. In the big picture, though, it's still nothing. That won't reach 8 billion people. To reach 8 billion people, these networks must be built into the banking system, as well as the tools and programs that people already use. Things like people's bank accounts, Venmo, and the ways they move money and use financial goods without them even realizing it. And I can tell you right now that they're not going to add the XRP system on their own. What's going to happen? Large financial companies like Bank of America and PayPal, which own the financial apps used by billions of people, will probably have to look to networks to improve their systems. Don't forget that Apple, Amazon, and PayPal are not the ones who make their own systems. They use the old-fashioned way of handling money that we use today. And they'd be glad to have a better rail. Right? They'd rather not wait for payment. They don't want to keep their money locked up, but they're working hard to make the best app possible. And right now it's just sitting on an old system. Large companies are saying, hey, we can just use different rails and get a better result for our